So, a very good morning to those who are here for the Zoom this morning, and very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, to those who are joining on YouTube later on. This is the sixth and the last teaching on the Prajnaparamita. And more generally, it is the last teaching in this whole series on the Six Paramita that started one way or another last January. We haven't been doing it full time, of course. There have been other courses in between, but we've covered roughly all six paramitas. And the way this Prajnaparamita has worked out according to the Tibetan calendar and astrology has been very nice. It wasn't planned, but somehow it happened like that. So teaching 4 started on Tibetan New Year and the new moon, and then teaching 5 was on Medicine Buddha Day within these 14 special days of celebrating the Buddha's miracles, which is a very special time in Tibetan Buddhism. And now today we're on the full moon, and the full moon is the day we have the largest commemoration of Lord Buddha's miracles, and it's the end of this special period. So it's reaching full moon is supposed to be very auspicious when you're finishing something, finishing a task. So that worked out very, very nicely. And at the end today, we should make, all of us, a super dedication of whatever goodness and benefit there has been over this last year studying these 6 paramitas. So anyway, today, now I've primed you and you know what a special day it is, and then please let's give rise to a really loving, powerful, special motivation for this session, most particularly feeling we are here for everybody, and we are the very, very fortunate ones with the ability to study Dharma, practice Dharma. And yeah, so let's put that into formal words. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, all 6 of these paramita, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well, live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, find respect, live in places of peace and plenty, and most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these good things to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being that's totally beyond suffering, and attain great equanimity, free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamavate shameta shatru om kurim arajite karota kiore te jovati oloyane bishudan male Malapanaye kukure kaka grase, grasana omuki paramuki amuki, shamedawane sawa graha bandhanane nigri, yitva savabhava pravadina, vimukta marapasha savitva buddhamudra, anurgatita savamare putsarita parishude, Biga Shantu Savamarakama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. As you can imagine, we have a lot to do today in order to finish this brief and very unsatisfactory journey through Prajnaparamita, which is a deep and immense topic in so many ways. So last time, one of the main things that should have emerged is the importance of understanding what the middle way is and our need to follow it. And we saw that this middle way is not a compromise, it's not a half and half mixture, it's not kind of the reasonable middle. That sometimes is put forward in simple Buddhist teachings, beginners' teachings. It is not a middle in the mathematical sense, in the geometrical sense of a halfway point. It's like so many things in Dharma, many profound things, defined by what it's not. It is not extreme. We are avoiding our mind getting set in extremes, and in particular in an extreme understanding. It's more than an understanding, but an extreme understanding of what ultimate truth is. In that sense, there are two extremes. What we didn't have time for in this course is to look more deeply into middle way philosophy and see the four extremes. Sometimes it's expressed like that, and many quite important aspects of philosophy. Today, and in these last talks, we've been going through Gampopa's brilliant resume of Prajnaparamita, and today, I think it's today, if it's not today, it was yesterday or around this time, at the end of the Buddha's miracle period, we particularly celebrate Gampopa. I think it's today. So all through this last year and more, as we've gone through the paramitas, we've been doing so according to Gampopa's teaching. But anyway, to get back to the point, the middle way is not letting our mind go to extreme fixed ideas, fixed feelings, fixed preconceptions. The two main extremes are translated variously. The first one is called Rayism, eternalism, is characterized by the word is. So we either make someone, God, gods, or something, the universe, or even our own idea of Dharmakaya, Buddha mind, we make it into something or someone. Absolute truth becomes something we can get our head around. An idea where that's it. That's what we're aiming for. That's what we're working with. We have an is fixed idea. That's an extreme. The other extreme is characterized by isn't. And it's nihilism, where there is no ultimate. There is no ultimate. There's just stuff. Stuff happens. It's very much like many people's scientific approach, which is why in an earlier session I gave you those brilliant quotes from quantum physicists. And when you look into the world of the greatest physicists and scientists, you see what spiritual people they are. So that's another story. But anyway, a lot of science just thinks things just happen. There's cause and effect on the material level, but nothing more, nothing more. There's nothing spiritual, there's no karma, there's no rebirth, there's no divine goodness, there is no universal wisdom, none of that. That's just human fantasies. So it's just life as it happens. So that's called nihilism, especially when it tends to be dismissive. You know, we're just all atoms. You see things like this on social media. We're nothing more than a cluster of atoms in an endless space. Disagree. We are more. That's a reductionist view. It's so stupid, it's ridiculous. It's just silly. Especially when it's presented as wisdom. But anyway, that's nihilism. So we don't let our mind either go there in the extreme or even wander that way. With this middle way, I think of it as a tiny flying saucer, and you're standing on the middle. So if you start walking towards the edge, the whole thing's going to tilt and you're going to fall off. You're kind of balancing on the middle of your flying saucer, and as long as you don't go not just to the edge, but even tending towards the edge, you'll be okay. So the middle way in terms of working with our spiritual path, our mind, all of the Dharma work we're doing is not to make it something, someone, ultimate truth, this fixed idea of where we're going, what we're going to achieve, what we're going to become, and not to make it nothing, totally empty, nothing at all. And last time, I know I went through it quickly, but they're the two extremes. We try and avoid the two extremes. And they said the problem with both extremes is that they are based on, now this is a difficult point, mind. By mind, we mean not just thoughts. It's the word citta, not just thoughts, but all mental activity. And in most of these talks, I've expressed that as our consciousness mind stream, with all of its aspects, thoughts, emotions, feelings, memories, fantasies, everything the mind can do. We can make it more technical, the 5 aggregates, but that whole interactive mixture of the 5 aggregates that we are comes together to make these notions. For instance, if people have profound spiritual experience, it's profound, it moves them, they have emotions, it's probably the most vivid thing that ever happened in their life. And when they come down, the come down from spiritual experience is a very important time. is the time when we formulate the explanation in our minds. Most deep spiritual experiences are beyond words. They happen almost in a flash. I saw a very interesting documentary, an interview the other day, a good half an hour of somebody who had near-death experience, and very interesting, talking about all the different things that happened in a flash. But this person's been talking about that for the last, goodness knows what, 15, 20 years. My own feeling is that what happened in a flash or a very short time has since been formulated into many, many aspects. It's a very thorough explanation of all the different things that happened to her. Very, very interesting for people who are interested in death, after death, between lives. But what she probably doesn't know, and that what happens to many people with spiritual experience and meditators is that when we have in-depth experience, afterwards, as we're reintegrating with our normal mind stream, something in us has to sort it out, tell ourselves the story of what happens, and then sometimes tell other people the story of what happens. So we put words on it. So the problem with those two extremes is that they are the work of our samsaric consciousness. They're ideas. Very deep, subtle ideas, but they are ideas. And even if it's not a philosophy, a set of ideas you've inherited from a system, it's what you believe the ultimate to be, deep inside yourself, your feeling of it, your whatever it is for you. As God, as the universe, as life. People use terms like this. So that is the problem, is that we get stuck in an idea. The idea of something isn't the something. That's the problem. So we want the something. And the idea of the something is standing in the way of us getting the something. Okay. It's a hard topic if people don't have meditation experience. There it makes total sense. But if I can give you, just from me, not from the scriptures, an example which may ring home for those of you who have been in couple relationships for a while. Sometimes the other person can't see you because of their preconceptions about you. Well, not just couples, families. It's like when you go back to your parents and you've led a lot of life and you've done things, and you go back and they're still relating to you like the person who grew up, and they just don't get all of the rest. And somehow, because they relate to you like that, then you react like that, or otherwise you get quite upset. Or in a couple, you think, this person's talking to their stereotype of me, the image that's developed. They don't see me anymore. They don't feel me change. They don't know me, or they can't feel the real me. I don't know if this makes any sense to you. Maybe somebody could put a hand up if it makes any sense. As an example, yes. Okay, so sometimes the preconception stands in the way of the direct, real experience. So our ideas of the absolute stand in the way because the actual experience of the absolute truth, the true nature of our mind, is indescribable. It's beyond words. It's why we've had these ideas so many times, beyond the scope of the intellect, beyond words, beyond anything this relative mind can experience. So we saw last time, when it is experienced, it's because everything else in you has shut up, basically gone quiet. And then what has always been can manifest, can be. So we got last time to the section which is the need to cultivate this. Now that's an interesting topic, or this is an interesting topic. Which, when you think about these teachings, just in terms of words, is going to raise some questions, unless you've got the answer already. This Buddha mind, the ultimate truth, that's always been, that's changeless, how can you cultivate it? What do we do when we cultivate things? You can learn to play an instrument, you can learn a language, we can cultivate a kind and gracious attitude towards somebody. We know what it's like to develop something, to work on something. Can you cultivate Buddha mind? And why is that a whole section? And why does it say there's an absolute need to cultivate this? So it's not that difficult, but it's something very important to understand about our Dharma practice. We do not make enlightenment. It is what is called a result by removal. So all of our Dharma work is to take away what is blocking up this natural experience, this natural being. All of our Dharma work is a destructive work. So when it says cultivate this, then it means we need to, if we don't follow the Dharma instructions and the Dharma path, it will never manifest. So it's like a wall. I think I mentioned that last time. It's like a wall that's around you. You need to destroy the wall, then you have an infinite field of vision. It's always been there, what you see, but you'll only see it when you break down the wall. So there are various examples of this in the Buddha nature teachings. And so looking at it from different ways, one of them is a golden statue that's been cast in a clay mold. So if somebody comes across the clay mold, it just looks like clay. You need to know, first of all, there's gold inside, and then you need to, first of all, chip away the clay. When you get closer and closer to the content, then you need to start using rough cloths and softer cloths so that you don't damage the gold that's underneath. So our Dharma path is very much getting rid of the gross blockages we have in our mind, the continuous thinking. Without shamatha, you're never going to get free of your continuous thinking. This, that, never stops. And it's got a total grip on you. There's these gross things, and then our emotions, things upset us, and so on. We've got the 5 mind poisons. So we need to get rid of the gross, and then the more subtle aspects of thinking, dualistic thinking, our projections of other people, of reality, our projections of ourself, and so on, to a very, very fine level. All of our Dharma work is a taking away. So it's called a result by removal. You don't make the result, like an empty room, all the space in a room. You don't make the emptiness. You take things out, but then what's left, the space. You never made it. It was always there, but you couldn't appreciate it until you took everything away. It's a result by removal. And if you don't do the work, then you'll never get that result, even though the result has nothing to do with the work in itself. Space of an empty room has nothing to do with sweating, carrying big armchairs and cupboards out of the room. Your sweat didn't make the space. Well, it did, but it didn't, if you see what I mean. Without the sweat, there wouldn't be the space. But that space is not a direct result of your sweating. So we need to think about this. It's not difficult, but once you get it, you get it. How what's always been there can only be revealed. So other examples in the Buddha nature teachings are like the oil in sesame. Sesame seeds are hard. You can't fry something in a pan full of sesame seeds. You just get toasted seeds. You need to grind the sesame seeds first. And the oil that's always been inside them comes out, and you can use it for cooking. Or another example is butter in milk. So although the milk's there potentially, the butter's there potentially in the milk, it's only when you process the milk, churn it and so on, that you get the butter. So many examples like this for a result by removal. And then in Maitreya's beautiful Buddha nature teachings, we get 9 examples that relate to 9 aspects of our path, showing how something's always been there, but it will only become apparent when the necessary work has been accomplished. So there is a definite need to, it says, cultivate this. And it is a cultivation because it is a path. Starts in a lot of ignorance in the sense of we ignore our Buddha nature. It's there, but we don't even know it's there. And then bit by bit, through the instructions, it manifests indirectly. And then further down the path, it manifests directly when we work through the bodhisattva levels until it is 100% and there's nothing else but that. So manifests indirectly is like dawn. Dawn, first light. You don't see the sun, but from the darkness of the night, then there's that first change, there's the first light in the sky. You're very welcome. You can start to see enough to walk around a little bit if you're careful. And then the dawn gets more and more. Nice colors appear. And it's only when it's quite light that the actual sun, where all that light's coming from, can be seen over the horizon. So our path is like that. It feels like the more we do, the better we do it as we proceed along our spiritual journey, the more wonderful things manifest. But we must remember all along that we are not making it, we are not doing it, we are removing what was blocking it up. We must be very careful not to block it up with new things and other things, which is described on Buddhist and other spiritual journeys, how your spirituality can go wrong and how you prevent yourself from a deep awakening. So on page 34, the need for this to be cultivated. Gampopa gives us 4 aspects through preliminary practice, Ngondro, that's the word, through meditation, in post-meditation, and through the signs of familiarity. So the first is the preliminaries, which is a huge topic. Those of you who are practicing Ngondro and the preliminaries, you know just how much there is to know there, and not just how much there is to know, but how much there is to practice. In our Kagyu tradition, we have the Ngondro, we have the 4 common preliminaries. They're contemplations that are sometimes called the 4 ways of changing the mind, changing the heart, changing the mind. They're called common because they are common to all levels of Buddhism. Sutra, Tantra, we think about impermanence, precious human life, karma, cause and effect, suffering, samsara, and until our mind changes. And there are signs of what that change is, and we should do those until there are significant changes of heart. And then there are, in the Kagyu tradition, these days, the 4 special foundations, Ngondro, they're special to the Mahamudra path of the Kagyu lineage. Just like in Dzogchen, there are the 4 foundations for Dzogchen. We need to do the work. So then we do the likes of prostrations, refuge, bodhicitta is one, purification practice, vajrasattva, accumulation of a lot of punya, a lot of power through mandala offering, and then a guru yoga, whereby we open our heart and mind to the lineage blessing very fully. One was going to say professionally. It's not technically the right word because we're not earning a living doing this, but with when you get a really good professional and they do a wonderful job of something, they've been doing it for years, like good electricians who rewire your house. It's so neat. And cowboy electricians, bad electricians, then it can be a dangerous mess, Professional. We get to a professional level of integration with the guru and the lineage through the guru yoga. Wasn't always like that. These foundations were much looser in the path. Guru, disciple is one-on-one, and the guru just recommends whatever's needed to prepare the student's mind for the actual teachings of Mahamudra, the meditation teachings. Anyway, that's another story. So we need to do those practices because they are really the first, earlier on I mentioned, we need to get rid of the gross stuff first, like chipping off the clay from a statue. You can chip away because it's like this and there's a statue inside that's much thinner, so you can happily chip away at the beginning. We carry a lot of gross baggage from this life, from past lives, emotional baggage, karma, and so on. And we need to deal with that. We have a confused mind that's placed its trust in many things that can't deliver, in worldly success, in human relationships, in whatever it may be. So we place that trust in the refuges that can really provide a constant, trustworthy refuge. We take our selfish mind baggage, where that's what part of our life, a lot of our life, is self-centered. And through bodhicitta, we need to make our life a life of service. And then we carry a lot of karma. We need to do vajrasattva, purification practices to really free us from the burden of karma, and so on. So we need to do the preliminaries. It's hard work, it's donkey work, it takes a while because usually we carry a lot of baggage. But they're called preliminaries or foundation practices because they make us ready, make our mind ready. You know, the whole way we are, the way we think, the way our mind operates, ready to receive deeper meditation instruction, lineage instruction, how to open our mind to Buddha mind. So there's the preliminaries we have to do. And it said, secondly, the actual meditation. So page 35, Khenpoken says, one needs to meditate according to the Mahamudra system of instruction. One lets the mind settle, free from even the slightest mental effort to posit or to negate, to adopt or reject. Remember the two extremes, is, isn't. So we're going to learn to observe and work with our mind as it is saying is, even in the most subtle ways. Akon Rinpoche's term, which I always found very helpful, was making things solid, making situations, making your own mind manifestation, making it too solid always gets us into trouble. But then the opposite, being too dismissive of things, just saying doesn't exist, unreal, doesn't matter, that gets us into trouble too. So in Mahamudra instructions, we learn how to work with the mind. If we go to the bottom of the page, we get Tilopa's quote. Now you'll see this a lot on Buddhist social media these days. What you see on social media would make a translator like me tear their hair out. As you can see, I haven't, I've still got some, but needs a lot of forbearance because there is Tilopa's words, as we have them, and there are the explanation of those words. Now, Tilopa's words, it's almost just like 6 words, not 6 phrases, 6 words. And the first 3 all look like think in Tibetan translation. It's like, don't think, don't think, don't think. And so we need the explanation about, and in the translation, we can make 3 think words, like not pondering, not thinking, not assessing. But it's just 6 words, 5 of them with negatives. So that's often unpacked in translations, and people say, Tilopa said. And I'm looking at what I see on social media. I said, no, he didn't. He never said that. What he said was this. But then it's unpacked, and as soon as it's unpacked with more words, it limits the meaning. And then especially the English that people use, if it's read by somebody without Mahamudra instructions, will be misunderstood. So this is very hard. It's what Tilopa said to Naropa, who was such an advanced student when he came to him. One of India's best panditas, meditators, bodhisattvas, beautiful loving mind. It's the instructions Tilopa gave to him at the right time. It wasn't the instructions Tilopa gave to the 21st century through Facebook at the wrong time to be misunderstood, all right? But anyway, so the first one means not thinking about, it's not even thinking about, because that takes too long. It's not being with, it's not getting involved with, it's not dwelling on the past. So you see translations like, don't dwell on the past, don't think about the past. But it doesn't mean the past. The past, that's big. The past is big. It's very big. It means in the instructions, when you get the Mahamudra instructions, what happened the split second before. That past. The immediate past of this present moment. We need to let that past go. At the moment, we're sticky in all sorts of ways. It's like when you've got glue on your fingers, you stick to everything you touch. So we need to get rid of the glue. And so not the past, and then the same for the future, but it doesn't mean the future in the general sense of all of our fantasies and preconceptions, fixed ideas about the future. It means what's about to happen in the next split second of your meditation. The anticipation for the next moment that can be in this moment. And it says, don't be in the present. So we learn not to be, because being's the problem. We've been being for so many thousands of lifetimes, and we've been all sorts of things and got up to lots of things. We have to learn not to be. Including not to be as meditators. If I'm being here now, there's too much being there. The here and now is there. You can be just like this. You can be totally laid back. It's still the here and the now. Couldn't be anything else. If you said, be somewhere else in another time, how are you going to do that? You are here now, whether you like it or not. And whether you sit up and you be here now, or whether you don't look any different from anybody else. The here and now is the here and now. So we learn not to be in the moment. The moment. We learn, this works out very nicely in English. We learn not to be in the present, but to let the present be. Such a difference between those two. It's a few words. Being in the present is about you. Letting the present be is about whatever manifests. And then, so, not analyzing things, not assessing, it says here, not interfering, not trying to change in any way what's happening. So there's 5 no-nos, and 1 yes, leave mind to itself. We learn to leave mind to itself. So it's not for me today to train you in this, even to explain it. When the time comes after the foundations, the ordinary, the common, and the special foundations, when the time's right for Mahamudra instruction, then we learn more about how to do this. But it's called the actual practice. So there's some wonderful quotes. Let me just read them without unpacking them. Page 36. An elephant that's been trained, like a mind which is stably relaxed within itself, not stably relaxed within an object, a candle flame, a stone, an object, mind which has relaxed into itself, it's at peace with itself, and that is stable. So that's like an elephant that's been trained and has stopped running to and fro and is naturally at ease. So Nagarjuna says, this is what I've realized in the sense of made real for him. And hence, What need have I for teachings? And many times when there is deep transmission, the guru tells the disciple, you don't need teachings anymore. Within this, there's everything. Everything comes out of this naturally, spontaneously. You don't need blah, blah, blah. And you don't need practice. The only practice is being in Buddha mind. There's no greater practice than that. So then Nagarjuna also says, don't adopt an attitude or think in any way whatsoever. Don't interfere with it. Don't contrive. Leave the mind loose in its own nature. This uncontrived is what we call the unborn true nature. This is to follow in the wake of all the enlightened ones. And then the Lord of Hermits, that's Savaripa. Savaripa was Maitripa's guru. Maitripa was Mahaprabhu's guru. First line, do not see fault anywhere. There's no way to explain this one. It doesn't mean psyching yourself into a mindset. We're avoiding mindsets where everything's perfect. Everything's perfect. That's not wrong. That's not wrong. Are people killing each other? Oh, wonderful. Nothing wrong with that. And people stealing and me doing this, me doing that. No, it's all right. It doesn't mean any kind of mindset, inner monologue, inner guidance system. Like that thing that landed on the moon a day or two ago. Got all the way to the moon and it landed almost perfectly. Then it toppled over. They had two of them, a Japanese one and an American one. They both toppled over. Went all that way and toppled over. So when we are doing the actual practice of Mahamudra through our Guru's kindness and guidance and instructions, then the natural perfection of that will be there, but our historical mind will want to talk fault, will want to position us in a perspective, a view of things, an attitude towards people, towards circumstances, towards the world we live in. If we get to the point where we don't see fault in anything, that's a very, very wonderful sign of achievement, very high achievement. Practice that which is nothing whatsoever. Do not foster longing for signs of progress and the like. Although it's taught that there is nothing whatsoever to meditate on, do not fall under the sway of inactivity and indifference. In all circumstances, practice with mindfulness. So how we do that? Be relaxed, not doing anything in particular, but still being mindful and so on. You'll never work it out from books. You need teachers, meditation, guidance. We're looking at the actual practice. Saraha's famous saying, if there's graha, if there's involvement with anything, get rid of it. Once the realization comes, everything is that. No one will ever know anything other than that. But of course, that has now become this. What is that for us? Buddha mind and what we talk about has become this. Everything's this. And all the answers are in this. So I'll leave you to explore some of those quotations. In the 8,000 verse Prajnaparamita, we come back to this heading, to cultivate Prajnaparamita. It says to cultivate Prajnaparamita involves cultivating nothing whatsoever. So the words, I mean, if ChatGTP is going to have a nervous breakdown with this, if we just look at the words, there are so many contradictions. So thank goodness ChatGPT can never handle it. We need to meditate. We need to have the whole journey, the whole path of growing meditation experience for this to make more and more sense. But we are cultivating nothing whatsoever. Our practice is, as I said earlier, a need to cultivate by getting rid of what is blocking up the works. And the more you meditate, the more you'll realize what's blocking up the works. You won't need to look in books. Every time you sit on your cushion, you'll realize your mind's lack of finesse, its busyness, its all the things that need to go. So mindfully, we need to work on those, but we are not working on making the result. It's not as though you can make more and more love until you are the ultimate love. When we get rid of ego, we see ego, self-centeredness, and we work on it and get rid of it, the love's naturally there. We don't need to become more and more generous. We need to work on our fear and meanness. And as we get rid of that, generosity is natural, as we saw in the paramita of generosity. How could you not give to somebody who needs if you have and they don't? But we don't because we are self-centered, or we're greedy, or we're simply scared of loss, and so on. So all of our Dharma path, and then when we meditate and work with our mind, then it's getting rid of distraction, it's getting rid of duality, it's getting rid of projections, fixed ideas. So this is what it says. To cultivate it is cultivating nothing whatsoever. It's like cultivating inactivity. So much of us wants to do. It's like cultivating, in those 6 things of Tilopa, analysis. So much of us wants to understand, wants to be able to put it into words, have it sorted, have it structured. Learning not to do that and to be open to the freshness and reality of the moment without the safety of all of our blah, blah, blah and projections. That's what we're doing. So it needs cultivating, but what we are cultivating is nothing whatsoever. And that same text also says to cultivate the paramita of wisdom is to cultivate space. How can you cultivate space? So, but space is the only thing, when we go through the scriptures, when we're in the practice, space is the only sort of example we've got in our world that can help us understand. Like, can you see your screen? If you're looking just now, can you see the screen? What's in between you and the screen? Space, isn't it? Otherwise you couldn't see it. So do you see the space? But in a way you do, because if you put your hand up, so you can't see the screen, you'll see a hand. So thinking about what space is, what is space. It isn't, is it? It's an absence. of anything there. So like to cultivate space, if you suddenly go minimalist in your house, you've got a house full of things from the past and furniture and stuff everywhere, and all of a sudden you get a different mindset, and you're going to throw stuff away and repaint everything black and white, maybe a bit of grey for artistic contrast. And simplify, you cultivate, then people coming in, oh, spacious room. Whereas before when they came in, and it's just everything everywhere, so much furniture, carpets, cushions, colours, very, very packed. I said, well, it feels spacious. How do we cultivate space? We do that beautifully. Sometimes we've been in an office, we've been in front of a screen, we've been in a city for a long time, and we need to go to the sea, to the mountains, to the forests, where there's this feeling of space, nothing limiting. So the definition of space is what obstructs or what limits. And when we cultivate space, we make space, I suppose we'd say these days, we are getting rid of what obstructs and what limits. So here, the space we're cultivating is the sacred space of Buddha mind, and we're getting rid of what limits or obstructs us. And it says, the paramita of wisdom, Prajnaparamita, is even less of a conceptual nature than is space. Is space of a conceptual nature? Can you see the space between you and the screen? No? Can you touch it? Can you feel it? Can you smell it? Can you taste it? What have we missed out? Can you eat it? Can you eat the space between you and the screen? No. But is there space between you and the screen? Yes. So then, what is this space? It's an idea, isn't it? It's the way we humans, we make ideas to express the fact that there's nothing between you and the screen. There's nothing obstructing, there's nothing limiting. We say there is space. But space in itself is nothing in itself, but for us, it's a concept. And it's wonderful. Einstein dealt with all of that a century ago, very clearly in modern scientific terms, understanding what space is and isn't. So the paramita of wisdom, Prajnaparamita, is not like that. It's not just another useful idea. So we avoid the extremes. It says it's not to think of either arising or unarising, born, unborn. So then they said, well, how does somebody see voidness? We're on page 38 now. Seeing voidness does not involve sight, it says in the sutra. And another sutra, same sutras, which is the sutra most excellently summarizing Dharma, says, it's actually one of the Buddha's disciple replying to the Buddha's question, saying, Bhagavan, or victorious, accomplished, transcendent one, not to see anything is to see excellently. Without, and then in that same scripture, without seeing anything whatsoever, the one and only nature is seen. So we use words like seen, otherwise we have no words to use. And if I were an enlightened master, if only, but if I were, I could just sort of sit here and nothing would happen. We need words, some kind of words to give us some sort of rough idea. We say he saw the true nature of mind. But there's nothing to see. There's nothing to hear. There's nothing to taste or touch. It's not that sort of an experience. There is nothing to know. It's not conceptual. There's nothing to remember, like past experience, or to fantasize. So it's known by itself and of itself. Mind, the Buddha mind, knows itself very clearly. That's where we're going. Shut everything up, then Buddha mind is manifest, and it knows itself very clearly. So the seeing is called seeing with the eye of mind. And in other places, not today, but you'll get, the 5 types, the 5 levels of vision. Worldly eyes, they're called water bubble eyes, like ours, that see what they see. Divine eyes, sort of vision, visual reality that the devas are in, where they see many things we can't see. Then there are Dharma eyes, and Prajna eyes, and Buddha eyes, each with their own level of sight and insight. So the finest eye of mind is what sees the true nature. But this is a very useful teaching. It's not just philosophy about something over there. We have so many experiences through meditation that we feel, that we see, or that we hear. They are translations into our level of experience. But when it comes to recognizing your Buddha nature, it happens. We say, deep within, it's words. There's no within, there's no without, but it feels like deep within the mind knows itself. Deep within the mind knows itself. So anyway, we've just looked briefly at a kind of free, brief sample taste of Mahamudra instructions, the actual practice. The need to cultivate this, we need the preliminaries, foundations, we need the actual practice, the Mahamudra instructions about cultivating nothing. And then third, we need to practice properly between sessions. We need to cultivate Prajnaparamita between sessions. How do we do that? Khenpoken says, while viewing everything which occurs in between meditation as illusory, every wholesome merit possible should be established through the practice of generosity and so on. So we become in between our actual Mahamudra sessions, assuming that they're working, that your way of practicing Mahamudra is working. So then you get up off the cushion and life's still there. The family's still there, the world's still there. It's all still going on. How do we act? Like a dreamlike actor in a dreamlike world, accomplishing dreamlike virtue, but only virtue. Very famous quotation from Padmasambhava, make your view as broad as space, which means what happened on the cushion, Buddha mind. No obstruction, like space, no limits, no obstruction. So that we've been in that infinite, pure, blessed space of Buddha mind on the cushion. We keep that as our view when we're plunged into relative reality. But while we're in that relative reality, second after second, we make our action as fine as flour. So like very fine flour, every second. So what does it mean? It doesn't mean just what we do with our body. It mainly means our mind, our relative mind. Relative means in relation to people, in relation to what's happening in the world, what's on our screen in that moment, second after second. Each second is an opportunity for virtue, for practicing the first 5 paramitas, one way or another. So it doesn't just mean in a gross way, go out and do charity work and that kind of thing. It means while our mind is not in the endless Buddha space, but has to be involved with daily specific reality through our karma, then we realize the endless possibilities for virtue, virtuous thought, prayer, all sorts of things. With time, in the middle of page 39, it says, meditation and post-meditation become inseparable. So at first, there's this profound experience on your cushion, but then you're back to life in samsara. But bit by bit, the samsaric reality becomes the place where we need to learn to be enlightened as well. The clarity, the Buddha mind needs to come into daily life, and the daily life will enrich our Buddha mind, and the two in the end become inseparable. That's what happens. Now, near the bottom of page 40, 2 important points about Prajnaparamita. First, it's the best. It's the best of all the 6 paramitas. It's far superior than the first 5, which we saw make skillful means or compassion. Secondly, that by practicing Prajnaparamita, this perfect wisdom of the mind, our mind in a place of Buddha wisdom, or developing towards Buddha wisdom, that is all the other practices. So then we get pages to tell us how, if you're in that pure space of Mahamudra, or Buddha mind, Dzogchen, if you want to use that term, if you're in that space, then that is the same as study and contemplation and normal wisdom development. It's the best. Why are we studying? To get there. If you're there, that's the whole point. It includes all study and the clarity, the wisdom about anything. All the answers are there. They're no longer in books. They're no longer in racking your brains and thinking like this and cross-reference. It's there. The answer's crystal clear. So it is study. He says it he gives each time sutras. In one sutra it says, it is more meaningful to practice this meditative concentration of Prajnaparamita for one session than to have saved the lives of the humans in all 3 dimensions. Saving life's a wonderful thing. If you can say, in this life, I've saved one life, what an incredible thing to have done. This happens. Sometimes it happens materially. Sometimes when we help and counsel somebody, it stops them committing suicide. You can really say, you've saved a life. So this is like saving all the human lives on this planet. One session of this being in Prajnaparamita is worth more than all of that. And it includes all of that, not just worth more, not just better, It incorporates and then there's lots and lots of scriptures about making offerings. Making offerings is a big deal in Buddhism. In Tibetan Buddhism, they really go to town with huge offerings and offering ceremonies. So sometimes in the scriptures, it says, were you to make all sorts of offerings, all the five senses and everything, things, food, music, all wonderful jewels, riches, carpets, all the things like this, fit for a king. If you were to make those several billion times, and that for several cosmic eons, then you think of all the, what they call the virtue, the merit from that, making all those offerings. And he says one moment in real Prajnaparamita is worth more than that. And it is more than that. It's not just better than, it includes. So it is the greatest offering. Because if you look in offering, what are we doing? We are letting go of attachment to beauty, to power, to wonderful things. We're saying, I would rather let go of this precious objects and have the realization. So our mind having, as Saraha said, let go of graha, of clinging, of involvement. It's the deepest offering. And each moment in Prajnaparamita, we have by definition done that until the worldly mind gets us again when we're training. And the same for all the things. So right conduct, it includes right conduct. One could have been practicing vows, been a monk or a nun for many lifetimes. One moment in Prajnaparamita is worth more than that, and it includes that, because the whole point of moral discipline and so on is that it's a path to the natural mind of the Buddha. The natural mind of the Buddha doesn't need moral code. It could never harm anyone. It could never harm us. The whole point of vows is to not damage. Buddha mind could never do that. Naturally, it's called the natural samaya, the natural vow. It is to take refuge, it's to give rise to bodhicitta. You'll see pages of this. It's to do mantras, it's to practice fire offerings. Everything is included in this, and this is the best. The point being, when we've read through all of these, how it includes everything. Is that in between sessions we still need to do those things because we still have baggage. When you don't have baggage anymore, you'll know it. Some people say, how will I know when I reach the first bodhisattva level? Quite often they laugh. Depends if the person can take a laugh or not. Then they won't laugh if they can't. I mean, you'll know. It will be so blooming obvious. You won't need to dial a Rinpoche and say, excuse me, this is happening. Is this first bodhisattva level? You won't be like that. You won't be like that. It's like getting out of prison. Somebody released from prison doesn't need to say, am I out of prison? They know what the prison's been like, and there they are. They can get on a bus and go anywhere. It's amazing. So, if we come middle of page 45, well, Gampopa says, if solely familiarizing oneself with this essence of everything, this nature of mind, if that includes all those things, what was the reason for teaching so many graduated techniques? All those methods and meditations, and you need to do 100,000 prostrations and so on. It says, well, these evolved to guide those less gifted beings who are still confused about the nature of things. Well, that includes me and all of us, I think. But If the point is, if you've got it, you've got it. And if you haven't got it, you need to work to get it. It's this whole section, the need to cultivate Prajnaparamita. So in conclusion, it says, thus is attained an eternally liberated identity, an identity comparable to the vastness of space. That's a very controversial statement. An eternally lasting, something that's permanent. Identity, when the Buddha's teachings about no self. So in the Buddha nature teachings, this is so perfectly, so clearly taught, unpacked. Now, the top of page 46 is very important. The signs of having developed Prajnaparamita. This is the test. This is your Prajnaparamita thermometer. Your Prajnaparamita meter. Different spellings. Your Prajnaparamita meter. That's nice. I like that. So, increased attention to virtue. Not you care less and less about acting kindly, virtuously, purely, morally, ethically. It's an increased attention to virtue. A diminution of affliction. Less and less and less anger, upset, lust, jealousy, pride. The arising of more and more compassion for sentient beings, naturally loving, compassionate heart. An earnest application to Dharma practice. A rejection of all distraction. You really got no taste for it anymore. It's sick and fed up with the distractions. They seem really so pointless. And no more attachment to the things of this life. So I make a comment. Anyone feeling they have deep realization should use the above as a test. And so, are you more compassionate and so on, all those things. The consequences, we're coming to the end of this chapter, twofold, as always with the paramitas. There's the ultimate consequence, ultimate result, and in the meantime, they're called the temporary or the in the meantime results. Ultimately, Prajnaparamita is really what makes us Buddha, enlightened. In the meantime, every good and excellent thing will occur. So the condensed Prajnaparamita text says, whatever delightful, happy things are encountered by bodhisattvas, Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, gods, or any beings, all derive from the supreme paramita of wisdom. Meaning that all the delightful, happy things that happen for bodhisattvas, that happen for Shravakas, that happen for Pratyeka Buddhas, or for gods and humans, they happen through the practice of Dharma, through the practice of virtue. The practice of Dharma and virtue is brought to the world by the manifestations of this ultimate wisdom, this ultimate mind. As Buddhas that come to teach the world, as spiritual beings that come to help us in all sorts of ways. So all of the goodness in the world comes from our learning what goodness means. Our goodness makes, through the power of karma, results of happiness, timeliness, beautiful coincidence, things happen in a harmonious way through goodness. So we wouldn't know to practice goodness without the teachings of spiritual beings. spiritual beings are spiritual beings because they are inspired by Prajnaparamita. So there we've more or less gone through roughly Khenpoken's text. We ended up with the result, twofold result. Yesterday was the day of the year we particularly celebrate Milarepa. Milarepa is so important in our Kaiju tradition. And I thought it would be nice to end with some Milarepa song. And this particular, it's very short. It's called the Song of the Three Satisfactions. There are 3 verses about being satisfied. And it happened when there was somebody who in the text is called Drayturn. Turn means teacher, and Dray is the name of a region of Tibet. So this is Dray teacher. So he was a Lama in his own right, Dharma teacher. He'd heard about Milarepa, and so he thought he'd go to visit him. So this guy is probably got, I don't know, we don't have the details, but probably got a monastery. They have all the, what happens in a monastery, the rituals, everything, the whole Dharma setup. So he goes to see Milarepa, who's in a cave. When he comes in and looks around, there's no shrine, there's no texts, there's none of the stuff there. And he immediately feels sorry for Milarepa. He thinks, gosh, if he dies here, there's no images to bless him, there's no texts to bless him, there's no these sacred things to see, to be surrounded by. And it's because he has a kind heart and he's so used to, Dharma is what helps us all. He's got this kind of lovely bodhisattva mentality. He's a good teacher. But then that was his first thought, and Milarepa, being enlightened, know exactly what he was thinking. And so he tells him these 3 verses. In the first one, he says, homage to all the gurus. In this Buddha mandala of my own body resides the deity, the essence of all the Buddhas of the 3 times, past, present, future. The blessing of being without craving for the things of the senses makes offerings to it day and night. So he said, Buddha is within. The greatest offering is not being caught up, involved in sensorial experience, which is everything for us. So it goes so deep, freeing our mind from involvement with seen, heard, tasted, felt. So that's making every second offerings. It's what we were just looking at. The non-attachment is making offerings to the Buddha deep within the mind. So he says, though I lack outer offerings to present, normally a shrine you have what you're offering to and lots of offerings. He says, though I lack outer offerings, I'm quite satisfied. The word there, satisfied, means I'm really happy. I don't have the stuff, but I've got the best one inside me. Palaman hamla chat salo marang le jalwe koruna la tu son de shenyen po shoy Danya shemedo jinjilab Yindan sendu chapabu Chie chose mebetsem. Then he says, through recognizing as primordial wisdom, jhana, the 6 types of beings possessing Buddha nature in this divine palace of the self-arising 3 realms. Wherever I stay is a celestial palace. Everywhere is paradise. Everyone is paradise beings, as Buddha is saying. Whomever I befriend is the Yidam deity. Everyone I meet is a manifestation to me of my Yidam. Whatever I do is Dharmakaya. Though I lack shrine objects, I'm really quite satisfied, very, very happy. So elaborate shrines, sometimes in Buddhist monasteries, they have these amazing 3D mandalas of like Vajravarahi, Chakrasamvara, different Buddhas, and then images of the Buddhas, and then there's the Yidams that represent people's personal practice, the way they are discovering the purity of everything, the absence of fault anywhere. So he's saying, I'm in this all the time. I don't need to make a clay one or a metal one on a table in a corner of the room. Everything is sacred. Everyone is sacred, and everything is the manifestation of my own Yidam. So he's very, very happy. Kamsum ranchun shayena Chojul deshek nimbochen Yeshe chemporamutrape Gondoi doijan shayekam Sudan drogjan yedamla Nga jitara chejang chejiying Chitencha Mebetsem. The next one's harder to understand if you've not done the 6 yogas of Naropa, the inner work with chakras and channels. But there, through realizing that your inner energy body is the microcosm of the macrocosm out there, and they're completely interrelated and inseparable. So when you work with the inner body, then there are 1 main channel and 2 side channels. They're called red and white. So he's worked extensively with that. That's why he has miraculous ability to change the outer world. In his stories, we see how he is everyone and everything, and how he can use his body to influence. So he says, applying the ink of primordial wisdom to the paper of the red and white external manifestation, letters are written, letters of the 5 senses. And that manifests as anything whatsoever and is recognized as Dharmakaya. I don't have texts with their black squiggly letters, but with that I'm quite satisfied. In other words, the whole energetic manifestation of the universe moment by moment is his Dharma teaching. That's his Dharma text. And why do we have Dharma texts? We read them, we learn something. Every moment of experiencing reality and realizing the interdependence of us, the microcosm, with the macrocosm, that is his Dharma teachings. So he says, I don't have squiggly words on paper, but I'm very happy. Shinangwa karma shishobula yeshe champoya naksa char wampo ngaye yege tri chenang chuchi kuruga yigna pechame petsam. So he concludes, in general, every being in the three dimensions possesses Buddha nature, and realization of that is measureless. By applying my Guru's profound advice on this, I'm never separate from the three kayas, and my meditation experience is excellent. So when in the end death comes, I'll be exuberant. So he doesn't need to be blessed by images, by texts, by any of those things. For him, Buddha mind is everywhere, in everyone. And the Buddha's presence that we talk about in texts as the three kayas is ever present. I've got to sing that last one. Che kamsum kowe samchen la Deni yode tok tseme Domaik zamat sang jarwe Kuson dralme ting zinzan Nam puk shiste gare True. Shizungsu. So now for a year, we've been exploring the six paramitas. Today, on this wonderful and special full moon day at the end of the Buddha miracles special time, then let's dedicate this so that all sentient beings benefit, that our current world in which we live, which is part of our karma, benefits, that there is a war, end to war, all the wars that are going on, and to conflict more generally in society, in towns, in the home, in couples, inside ourselves, that the end of conflict, it comes about through our dedication. And so let's read the words, but with as deep a wish as you can make of giving, and in particular of giving to yourself, so that whatever goodness, understanding, transmission there was in our teaching, you don't waste. You put to good use for everyone's benefit. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained through the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of samsara, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. May its development know no setbacks, and may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. So thank you all very much. And now we've got a little time if you've got any comments or contributions or questions.
Just thank you. This was very, very deep and very much to think about for a long time. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Ken, I was thinking earlier about the whole problem of language and words being used necessarily because we've got nothing else to point with towards something that's beyond ideas and so on. And some of them are the kind of phrases which can be easily circulated on social media, as you were saying, and easily misinterpreted. And it reminds me of what I remember reading about people in kind of the Beat Generation period in the States and the kind of deep and very dangerous misunderstandings of some Zen teachings, almost to kind of think of it as just, well, there's nothing wrong with anything goes, and that a really dangerous misunderstanding, as dangerous as nihilism. And I was just wondering, it's got me thinking there of the difference between the state of mind of a dog, which if you point towards something, kind of if the words are like the hand pointing, the dog's looking at the hand instead of where the hand's pointing. I suppose that's just the way of making sense of what you were saying. So I don't know if that's useful in any way, but as an observation.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's hard to know, like the one I mentioned today, the 6 points of Tilopa. Sometimes they call them the 6 nails these days. I think people get even though they misunderstand, it can still be helpful with that. So they're learning not to cling to the past, not to cling to the future, and so on, rather than apply it to meditation. But other things in my own training, I was taught that it's much better to just and only receive the important things from your teacher. And that sometimes it's not helped us, what we've read before about it, or what we've heard before about it, indirectly through our own researching around. We've got all that stuff in our head which colors the direct instruction. And if you imagine you never heard anything, and how the teacher's instruction will come into a fresh mind, then you can see there's some benefit. But of course, for that, you need a teacher in the first place, and a really good teacher at that. And you need to be committed to following that advice. So these days, when not everyone has access to a good teacher, I think there's a lot of benefit comes through what they can find online and in books. But when you get really committed to one path and one teacher, I think at that point you have to unlearn and learn to almost uniquely apply the teacher's advice.
Yeah, I suppose I think of it a bit like some medicines or chemicals, which can be very useful used correctly, but if used incorrectly, it can be really corrosive. And so you need the warning signs on them to just kind of flag that up.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of those in the Dharma teachings. The warnings on the label, on the bottle.
Thanks for these teachings, Ken. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Ken, all I can say is thank you very much. It's just been quite amazing, and especially today with that Milarepa song. I'm pretty sure I've heard it before, and I'm pretty sure I've received teachings on it from a very high Rinpoche. But I'll have to go back to the to those teachings to check. But it was absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're very welcome. I always think that when Milarepa sang, he just let it out. He let rip, you know? And how musical it was. They do say that before, when he was a kid and growing up, that he was a naturally gifted singer and flute player. So he probably did sing quite nicely. Because you can never tell from the text whether it means singing or kind of, don't know what the word would be, chanting, you know, just putting a bit of melody, but not really, not really a musical production, but just kind of not monotone. But I always imagine him just bursting with happiness and joy. And when people ask questions, letting it come out however the music happened. So sometimes I've tried to do that. Sometimes it's really moving. Other times it's a musical catastrophe, kind of. I get myself, I want to go lower, but I'm as low as I can get, and I can't. So it comes out, there's no sound at all, barely. Or I'm up in the squeaky range, or I've changed key about 7 times already since the beginning. So I was very tempted to do that, but I thought better not. So that's a traditional tune. It's one most lamas use. I heard I think it was yesterday or the day before the Karmapa. There was a thing on social media of the Karmapa singing a Milarepa song using that tune. So that was me being safe today. Well,
Ken, I find these Prajnaparamita teachings really tricky. My brain just really struggles to understand them and all of the different philosophical schools. And I'm just wondering, I literally, my mind just can't do the gymnastics required.
mm-hmm.
And I just don't know where to start with it. What can you suggest anything?
There's a lot of Prajnaparamita teachings, which isn't a must. I think that last section, the one we did today, the need to cultivate this, and then through those 4 aspects, through the preliminaries, the actual practice, in between deep practice sessions, and then the signs of familiarity, which we had at the end. I didn't give you the title, but it's that we become more compassionate, more attentive to virtue. I think what we have in our lineages is the way that we can actually cultivate Prajnaparamita, and that's all we need. Unless you want to be a philosopher or discuss with other philosophers philosophy, then you don't need to understand what other spiritual traditions in the earlier days of India thought, where they overlapped with Buddhism, which we didn't really look at, but where they differed. Unless you want to do that, there's no need for the rest. So when in Tibet's colleges, what they call shedras, the study institutions, it's something you did. It's like a 3-year retreat. It's a package. So usually it was 3-4 years at least. So there, because it was a study package with a lot of emphasis on Prajnaparamita and Shunyata and so on, then Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist ideas, really. If we say philosophy, it makes it a bit too abstract. The way Buddhists think about what's ultimately true as compared with what others think about what's ultimately true becomes important, because they're training people to be Buddhist scholars who will be confronted with people who are not necessarily coming from Buddhist traditions, and they need to be equipped to understand, no, this is the way Buddhism sees it. And there's a bit of a difference with that. So if you're not training to be that sort of a khenpo, a geshe, a Buddhist scholar, then quite honestly, you don't need it. And as I said at one point in these teachings, it's very frustrating, because the great Buddhist minds of the past, like Shantideva, Nagarjuna, and so on, they made a very good, not just analysis of the spiritual traditions, the thinking of their time, but they had to actually contend with it and debate with those people. It was live. So that's what they put in their scriptures. But nowadays, we have modern thinking, 21st century thinking based on materialistic science, basically. And I don't think we realize how narrow a mindset we're pickled in. But we are, and we've got that sort of general set of assumptions that modern society has. And we've got all the amazing work that science has accomplished in its own analysis of material things only, but of material things. So what we need today is Shantideva come back, Nagarjuna come back, Buddha come back, and show how Buddhist thinking, where it overlaps with modern thinking and science and so on, and where it differs, or what it has to add. That will be really interesting for everybody. But otherwise, learning about what the Jains thought, what the naked ascetics thought, and the Samkhyas and so on, you don't meet those. I mean, we probably go through all of our lives without meeting one of them. So I don't think you need, I really don't think we need. Does that help, Vicky?
Yes, I'll just go back to my little. The way that I understand it is that the Buddha is describing the end of suffering, and he's describing this other state that exists. And if I'm right in that, I'm happy to believe it.
Yeah. That's what we Buddhists most Tibetan Buddhists would say, that's fine, that's okay. The Buddha nature, the Buddha mind as the other state is specific to the Tibetan schools and the Zen schools that follow Buddha nature teachings. But not all Buddhists do. For instance, in Theravada tradition and some schools, there's just suffering, and we can put an end to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks. Thanks for that little clarification that I'm not on the completely wrong path by thinking that.
No. It's very helpful. So what happens in Prajnaparamita, I mean, having an idea of an otherness which is perfect, is very, very helpful to get us out of what we're in at the moment. With the Prajnaparamita teachings, we're refining more and more what that otherness is and isn't as we go along. Yeah.
Hi, Ken. I like the KISS principle, the keep it simple, stupid principle. So I think applying that to this and what was just been said, I think it's useful to just put aside all the philosophical positions and descriptions, etc. And it could be summarized by just 3 words that you used early on today, and that is result by removal. And that's all that needs to be done. it's easy to say, but extremely hard to do. But result by removal is what it's all about.
Yeah. Sort of agree. It's just that when we make a result by removal, like uncluttering your room or breaking down a prison wall, you're going to make the effort because of getting space in your room or getting out the prison into the forest. What's on the other side makes the work worthwhile. And this is why there are teachings on ultimate truth. It's why the basic Buddhist teaching that we call the first turning is what everyone can understand. Life hurts in many ways. There's suffering. It can be gotten rid of. It can be worked with and gotten rid of. That's a kind of a general message for everyone. But other than dealing with that, is there out there not just a more sublime state, but levels upon levels before you get to that ultimately wonderfully sublime state that we call them the bodhisattva levels, which are inconceivable, miraculous states for us to achieve. If we just got 1 second experience of it, we'd be inspired for life. So Dharma's hard work. Working with our mind is hard work, and working with your mind not just to get rid of your own suffering, but we've seen all of these paramitas as being part of bodhisattva practice. So if we want to serve other people and do all that level of work of working on all the first 5 paramitas practically, then Prajnaparamita teaching is to give us a clearer idea of where we're going. And I think there's a value in that, because if result by removal, wonderful. But then why? What is there to remove, and how can we do it? It's complicated. Because life's complicated. I mean, we're complicated. I'm complicated. I think probably most of us are complicated. And then life's complicated. Karma's complicated. So all of that is cluttered to be cleansed. The removal.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go against what I just said about keep it simple, and ask, and I'll come along with you some with that, with a question which I have in my mind. You've made it clear through the weeks that the difference of approach of the Theravadins or the Hinayana, the result, if you like, being arhat, the state of arhat, compared with the Mahayana approach of the Bodhisattva, when, as you just say, going through the 10 levels, which, if I remember correctly, isn't necessarily like a ladder of 10 steps that you must step on one and go to the other, but it's 10 phases. But my question is, if and when an arhat takes the next steps or is brought forward by bodhisattvas or Buddhas to become into the Mahayana path of the bodhisattvas, or to use my simple wrong analogy, do they have to step onto the first step, bodhisattva level 1, or can they sort of jump or step onto different levels? So like, how do they transfer from the state of arhat onto the bodhisattva path?
They don't go straight to bodhisattva level 1 by the very definition of what bodhisattva level 1 is and the definition of what they achieve to become an arhat. But their path is very easy because of all the work they've done to become an arhat. They've got rid of their mind poisons on normally we talk about 9 levels of mind poisons, gross, middling, gross, subtle, gross, and so on, that one. So they've got rid of a lot of those. Their meditation shamatha ability is fantastic. So they go onto the path like a rocket, but the what we call aspiration bodhicitta, the mindset of the bodhisattva, needs to be developed first of all, and then the meditations of a bodhisattva, the meditation practices mainly of the bodhisattva, need to be understood, like Mahamudra instruction or whatever, and then they very quickly attain the first level. So it does say their path is easy, it's joyful, it's painless, it's joyful, it's easy, but not straight to first bodhisattva level. And then when we see what the details of first bodhisattva level, what remains to be removed, a result by removal, and what qualities are already there that need refining, then we can understand, yes, you work on that. And then when there's a quantum leap in the qualities and a quantum diminution of the mind poisons, then that's how we define second bodhisattva level. So it's vaster, it's clearer, and it is very much like quantum leaps. So they'll go through all but 10 levels, but sometimes you can go through the levels really quite quickly.
Okay, thanks very much.
You're welcome. Okay, well, so next week we start this series of 3 teachings on Buddha. Then after that, there'll be a series of 3 teachings on Dharma. Then after that, 3 teachings on, as you can imagine, the Sangha. And I've got no idea after that. So anyway, see many of you next week, I imagine. Take good care, and thank you for following through all of these Paramita teachings. Bye now.
Thank you, Ken.
Take good care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Ken.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you.